Welcome to Grief Uprooted, a podcast dedicated to sharing your grief stories. Together, we embark on the mystery of one's grief journey as they learn to live, heal, and be courageous in a world rooted in trauma. Join myself, Christine, in an open discussion to help you uproot the grief in all our lives. I am an award-winning author, professional speaker, and humanitarian in the field of grief and trauma. I want you to be part of the discussion. December 20th, 2024. 5 days till Christmas. Welcome back to Grief Uprooted. I'm Christine Dernetterland and your host. Today's episode, I decided to do something just for you. Today's December 20th. I can't believe it, actually. Only 5 days to Christmas. So let's focus on 5 grief reflections. Reflections that may come up that we need to look at. I kind of was trying to figure out a better word than reflections, but what I mean by 5 grief reflections is that during the day, during the holidays on Christmas, things are just going to kind of pop into your mind and you're going to be reflecting on them. You're going to be going, what is this? And how do I handle it? Do I think about it? Do I push it out of my mind? Or do I bring it forth and kind of honor that emotion or feeling or thought that I have? So today we're going to explore 5 grief reflections that possibly may creep in your mind during the holidays. Let's go. As promised, today we're going to look at the 5 grief reflections that may kind of creep into our day during Christmas. It could actually be right on Christmas. It could be Christmas Eve. It could be Boxing Day. It could be today. But what do we do during the holidays? And where do these thoughts and reflections kind of come from? So we're going to start with the first thing that I really kind of want to explore. And it may be one that's kind of hard to grasp, but it's kind of something I've never heard of in the grief world, but I think it's something we should start talking about. And it's your inner child. Inner child work is usually done when people are really looking at their beliefs, the way they process things, perhaps their views on things, when they're really wanting to change, open their minds, and really change their perspective of how they look at things. And recently, over the last year, during Grief Uprooted, the inner child has come up quite a bit. And I was fascinated on learning how our inner child can affect our ability to grieve. And then when I started connecting the holidays, what happens during the holidays? Traditions, memories, all these things start to creep up in our mind. And yes, we do ruminate on them. We start thinking about them. And sometimes rumination is when we can't let a thought go. Often happens when we're grieving. And we often are flooded with emotions. So the very first number one key point I want to look at is meet your inner child. Usually during the ages of 6 to 9, this can vary. We have experiences. And those experiences as children cause us to draw beliefs. And we can go way farther in. And this year coming, yes, we're going to dive into learning about our inner child, how that affects our daily lives. But really, for this purpose of this podcast, I want you to think about it as that little voice that's talking to you. That little voice that has a perception or a view about grief. During this year, I've realized that a lot of people, because we haven't spoke about grief, their beliefs, their views, and their lack thereof derive from our childhood. What were your parents like when you were experiencing grief as a child? What was your school like? What was your church like? And between that age of being that young child, between the age of 6 and 10, I would even go a little farther up. When grief hits, we tend to revert back to childhood behaviors. So if you are 14, you might return to acting like that 10-year-old. And during that time, you draw these beliefs. And This is where that little voice comes into your head and it tells you that this is where my loved one is. This might be my fault. Um, did I forget to pay attention to my loved one before they died? Did I not pay enough attention to my loved one before they died? I should have maybe been there more. Um, you were always working. Um, there's so many thoughts that could come into your mind. And over the last year, I've witnessed my guests struggle with this. Like, I should have made that phone call. Um, so many things. And when I ask them, where does that come from? Well, I don't know. That's your inner child who's drawn these beliefs that you're there to care for everybody. You should have been there on time. You should have done this. You should grieve this way. This is the way people grieve. There's just so many different things coming into your mind. And how do you calm them? How do you calm that voice within that has these perceptions and beliefs that were derived from your past? And they can be anything. I'm really just doing this episode um, really off the top of my head because I feel like that's the best way to relate to you. And that's the way grief is. It is so mixed up. It's a bag of just jumbled thoughts and emotions. And I really wanted to tap into this today as we enter Christmas. And all these memories are going to come. So, number one is really, what is your inner child and how does it relate to your grief? So, as I explained, your inner child is this voice that's within. Now, I am going to give you the other names that people call it, your unconscious. Often, they talk about one devil on your shoulder, an angel on your shoulder. Um, there's various names for it, but ultimately, it's the voice you hear in your head. It's how your belief systems were derived. And how does this relate to your grief? This is your belief systems. And those are concrete. Those are things you were raised with. That's what you were taught as a child. So when a memory comes up at Christmas time of your loved one, you're going to tap into those beliefs. And what if they're not serving you? What if it's not the right thing for you to be thinking? How do you talk to this voice and let it know that you're an adult now and that you've got this? That's when we need to take that time and reflect. You need to ask yourself, when that memory comes back and that feeling comes back, slow yourself down and say, what are you feeling? Parent that voice you hear. Parent that inner child. Parent yourself. Love yourself. Have that compassion for yourself. And honor those emotions and feelings. Let yourself feel it. And what is it that you need? What is it that you need this season to feel comfort and joy? And what can you do? And have a conversation with yourself. I think this will be the first time in your life that I will ever say, or you will ever hear, you're not crazy for talking to yourself. During grief, we talk to ourselves. That's the only way you're going to make it through. It's the only thing in life that truly, truly, you do not know how to comprehend. We don't have an answer for it. So it's something that you have to go within. You have to be able to look at yourself and have that conversation with yourself. And if you decide to talk to your loved one who has died, by all means, invite them in to help you. So number one is really look at your inner child. When you remember something or a reflection comes to you, have the conversation with yourself. It is okay to talk to yourself. We're going to look at number two. And this one I think is quite hard because sometimes our mind is running, and that's embracing simplicity. I even find that extremely hard. I think anybody does. But the key point is to release the pressure from being perfect. But sometimes when we're grieving, we like to wrap our minds into something. During the holidays, sometimes people want to dive into the holidays and just wrap up everything in the sense of having the table right, the turkey right. And they become a really, we feel like we become obsessed with it, and it all has to be perfect. Let go of that. It doesn't have to be perfect. All it has to do is bring your family and friends together. That's it. Really embrace simplicity, and tie in that inner child. Think back to your past and what brought you comfort when you were a child. Talk to that voice that's coming forward, or that voice that's saying, this has to be perfect. The turkey has to be perfect. And, don't be so kind to yourself. So many times during holidays, we want everything to be perfect. And if you burn the shit out of your turkey and you stand there crying, it's okay. It's okay. Sometimes that one thing breaks you, and it's okay. Eat ham. Do something different. Order pizza. Like order Chinese actually. And those are different things. That's a Christmas to remember. The only reason I say order Chinese is because I do recall a time that I burnt the turkey to crisp. And I think that was the only restaurant we could find open. And my family loved it. And of course, they remind me every year that I did that. But it was a trying year for me, and I'm doing my best. But we need to slow down and have that conversation with that little voice inside of us and say, what was your favorite Christmas? What was it? Was it the year that no snow came and you got to ride your bike? It could be so many different things. And it could be with your loved one who's passed. Reflect on that. And it's okay to cry. It's okay to reflect and feel that emotion. But realize that with that emotion, you have control. You control your emotions and what you bring forth to feel. Now, grief is the only experience in life that when we hear that our loved one has died, that we cannot control our emotions, our body, nothing. But as time goes on, we can. We can learn to accept them, integrate them, and cry with them. But learn, you as you recall that very sad memory that may be flooding your mind, you can pull in a happy memory. You can tie in that happy memory. You can talk to your loved one out loud. You can talk to your family about it. And you can laugh about it. And you can cry about it. Simplicity. It doesn't have to be perfect. Really, it doesn't. Number 3, creating a connection through a ritual. We hear all the time about a tradition, a Christmas tradition. And a lot of times when we've lost a loved one and they've died, we feel like we've lost the physical connection. But there's so many ways of bringing and fostering that spiritual and emotional connection. And to bring in the whole family is amazing. And to set out possibly a plate and put some food on it to represent all your loved ones who have died. It's that seat at the table for not only a physical body, but a spiritual and energy to join your table and your family. A symbol of your loved ones who have died, your ancestors who may want to join you on this day. A lot of times we like to make ornaments and place them on the tree. You can ask each person if they have a memory of their favorite Christmas. Christmas is such a time to reflect, and it brings up so many memories. And it's a time to not want to push them out, but to bring them in and to reflect jointly and have those new traditions. I think so many times we bring in those traditional traditions, right? But what if we were to change them up? Family dynamics have changed drastically over the years, and maybe your family dynamics have. Maybe we need to add in that on Christmas Day, we go to visit the gravestone of mom, dad, our daughter, a grandparent, our pet. And then we come and have breakfast together. Anything is okay. Whatever ritual or tradition you want to implement, and it's never too late. Um, never too late. Ask your children, what would they like to do? Maybe you like to buy your loved one an ornament every year to represent them or your ancestors and place it on the tree. There's so many different ideas. But the key point of today's podcast that you have the ability to create a new tradition or a new ritual, but you also have the ability to not continue one. I know that sounds hard. And I know your inner child may be going, we have to do this. We have to. Every year, my mother did this. Every year, my father did this. Every year, we did this. It's a family tradition. But I'm going to give you a very simple tradition that needs to be cut out within my own family. It was giving chocolate letters every year. Every year, when you're Dutch, you go to the Dutch store and you buy a chocolate letter for each person in the family. But as the years went on, diabetes was prevalent. And why in the world every year would I want to hand somebody who has diabetes now a chocolate letter? This tradition served such a great purpose when we were younger and we loved it. But we had to tweak it. I had to change it. So I decided that I would go to the Dutch store and every year I would buy little wooden shoes and hand them out. I'd buy a spoon and hand them out. Something that represented my culture, but it wasn't sugar. That's a simple analogy, but it's okay to change, embrace, and create new rituals. And as your family grows and changes, I think that's only a smart thing to do. And really, when we do this changing of rituals or adding new ones, or even doing the traditional ones, there's going to be that inner voice and you're going to wonder what it was. And, or you may just think it's your voice talking, but talk back to yourself. Ask yourself, is that really what you want to do? Or is that your inner child who has gained these beliefs and has these perspectives that maybe not suiting you while you're grieving? You can dive into this so deep and obviously I have with not only myself but with my clients and in my teaching and professional speaking, and I cannot tell you the amount of healing that comes from looking at your past and looking at the beliefs you've drawn. Most people, there are three key beliefs that come out of our inner child that we really get when we're younger. I'm not smart enough. I'm not worth being loved. I'm not lovable. And I can't do that. I don't know how to cope with this. I'm here to tell you today, you're coping. You're doing it right now. You're capable of coping. You're capable of being resilient and surviving your grief. Number two, you are extremely lovable. We are born into love. We are born with love. No matter what happens in your life, you don't lose value. You are worth being loved, no matter what. And you are extremely smart. You're listening to this podcast. You're very smart. We all can gain education, intelligence, but also emotional intelligence. Being smart in the decisions of what we allow in our mind. What do we accept in our thoughts? And how do we change these perspectives? There's so much to it. And belief modification is one of the most powerful things in grief. Because when someone dies, and something traumatic happens, it's like all those things that you've carried inside of you, like deep inside of you, comes forth. And it really lays out the map of how you're going to handle your grief and where you're going to step and how you're going to do this path. And we need to be able to stop and talk to ourselves and tell ourselves or parent ourselves, our inner child, and say, this may be not a good choice for me. It really is. It's invaluable when we can stop and reflect, when we can stop and really pay attention and realize that that connection can really be made through our rituals and our traditions. Create the world you want. Create the world you need. You have that ability. You truly do. Number 4, boundaries with loved ones. This is hard. It really is. But what are you protecting and why are we setting boundaries when we're grieving? Your energy. Those who are not grieving, I hmm, I ponder on how to phrase it properly. I know what you're thinking. If you're sitting here listening to this and you're grieving, they have no fucking clue. But when you haven't experienced a massive, oh, it's hard because everybody has experienced grief and everybody experiences it differently. But when somebody is in the Christmas spirit and they're happy and they're joyful and you're not, it's exhausting. You're trying to keep up. You're trying to act like you've got this. And it just it doesn't happen. And it's exhausting. So setting those boundaries to say, I just need some time out. Maybe you just want to attend a party for, an hour or two. That's okay. It's not like saying to people, I'm not doing anything. I want to do this, da 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 da, and acting like an asshole. It's more this season, since I'm grieving, I think I would like to go for a walk in the morning and spend it with my own thoughts. And then I'll join my loved ones for an hour or two. Maybe you are going to pack up and go on a vacation with your family. That's completely okay. And realizing that setting boundaries, maybe we should, as I'm talking, change this. Boundaries kind of has this feeling of, nobody's going to do this. Maybe setting lines of compassion, being able to say to people, I need to have a little bit of self compassion for myself. I need to love myself a little more this holiday. So, this is what I'm planning on doing and not having to apologize for it. You don't need to apologize. Most people in the world understand grief. Most people go, oh my goodness, how is that person going to make it through? And then they bring you pies and gifts and hearts and angels. And sometimes it's a little tough taking it all. But setting some compassionate lines for yourself to grieve is okay. It truly is okay. Do not worry what other people are thinking. It's none of your business about what other people are thinking about you. You worry about you. And trust me, it will save you during the holidays. You will be able to have the energy that you need to have for possibly those children, grandchildren, those special friends. Really take the time for you and preserve your energy. And some of the questions that I like to kind of ask myself when I'm talking to my inner child, and it's kind of like that loud voice in my head that's going, you need to give your parents all their gifts that you've gotten. And you need to make sure you give them right away because what happens if something happens after Christmas? What if that person dies? What if, and Sometimes you may think those are crazy thoughts, but I have interviewed people whose loved ones have died on Christmas Day, or a tragic accident happened and that person went out and bought all these Christmas gifts. And then on Christmas Day, they're opening gifts that their loved one bought for them, but that loved one died. These are all realities. And you, who may be listening to this, has experienced that. So sometimes we need to slow ourselves down when we're talking about boundaries and compassion for ourselves. And what do you need to feel safe and supported right now? And if that feeling of support needs to come from loved ones, ask them, reach out and say, you know, this tradition that we do every year, I don't know if I can attend that. It may just break me. And maybe they'll alter it. Maybe we can do a different tradition. Or maybe you want to experience that tradition. Maybe you want to have a candle, maybe at a table or beside that place setting to say, that's my loved one. Talk to yourself. Ask yourself what you need. What can I say no to in order to honor myself? What do I need to say no to? Saying no is okay. Saying yes is okay. But no is a lot harder. But sometimes we need to say no to people, and we don't need to reel it up with an explanation of why we're not doing it. We simply can say, thank you very much, but no, I will not be attending. Write a holiday yes list and a no list. I kind of like this, where you can write a yes to what you want to see during the holidays and things that no, you don't want to do. Writing things down not only allows your inner child and your mind to compute it better, but it feels very powerful to be able to go, yes, these are all the things I'm going to do, and no, these are all the things I do not plan on doing this year. If you need that extra step to kind of concrete it so that when you get that uncomfortable text or call and you don't know how to say no, sometimes when you look down at a list, it's kind of like when you go to a doctor and they say, write your questions down because when you get in there, you're all flustered and you forgot to ask that question. Why not do it for grief? Why not write down a yes or no list? I think it would be great. And if you have small children and you want to sit down with them and talk to them about it because maybe mom or dad has died this year, you can create this list. And what a powerful thing to give somebody. What a powerful way to say to your children and yourself that, we fear things we don't understand. And when we write it down, we feel smarter and we understand it. And that brings us a sense of security. Number 5, self-talk. I really want to express this. That conversation you're having with yourself, perhaps that voice in your head that says, I'm too fat. That voice in your head that says, I can't make it. My loved one died. Perhaps that voice is saying, you're not smart enough. Perhaps it's saying, you're not strong enough. The conversation that you're having with your inner child and that voice that you hear is your conversation with the universe. You would never, ever talk to a small child and say, you're not strong enough to grieve. You're not smart enough to grieve. You would never say that. Talk to yourself. Talk to that inner child and let the universe know that you're strong enough, that you're smart enough, that you're resilient enough to grieve, to make it through this Christmas. Don't allow that inner voice to take you down. Know that you're doing it. That's the part that I think so many don't understand. You're doing it right now. You're grieving right now. You're surviving right now. Make that conversation with yourself and the universe a good one. I am smart enough to grieve. I will learn along the way. I am strong enough to grieve. I'm resilient. I control my emotions. Yes, I feel sadness, craziness, confusion, loneliness, self-blame. But I also felt and will feel happiness and joy again. This holiday season, realize your conversation with yourself, your grief talk, is not only for you, it is for the universe, for your ancestors. It is for all the energy and spirits that are with you. You know you're doing it. You know you're strong enough. This holiday season, talk to the universe, talk to those spirits, talk to that energy, and let them know that yes, I'm grieving, and yes, I will stand up again. I can do this. I'm strong enough. These 5 things, these 5 reflections, are things that I have seen over the year with Grief Uprooted that people struggle with. They truly do. And these struggles all seem to derive from our lack and inability to have the conversation about grief. When I started Grief Uprooted, I just wanted to uproot a conversation and talk. And had I known the impact it would have and how many people would flock to me to be my guests, it's a huge honor. But it also shows me that we need to continue the conversation. So I'm not going anywhere. We need to talk. The 5 grief reflections. Meet your inner child and listen to their needs. Embrace simplicity. It doesn't have to be perfect, trust me. Create a connection and rituals to honor your loved ones and your ancestors. And if the tradition doesn't serve you, let it go. Grieve it. Number 4, set boundaries or those compassionate lines to parent that inner child this season. And lastly, remember, your self-talk is your conversation with the universe, your ancestors, and we want to make that conversation one of love, resilience, and strength. I wish you all a very, very peaceful, warm, and safe holiday season. I know it's not going to be easy. I truly do. But I'm here to tell you, from grief, we grow. From trauma, we grow. And you have the strength and the resilience to continue to grow. Thank you for tuning in. And as usual, it is only together that we grieve. And it is only together that we heal. Happy holidays, everybody. Take care. Grief Uprooted professional grief and empowerment coaching are not to be used as a substitute for professional advice by legal, medical, financial, business, spiritual, or other qualified professionals. All our products and services are designed for grief empowerment through learning and sharing of one's lived experiences.